I found them in Eleanor's cabin. My son and a French woman I'd never seen bent over contracts to sell our 45-acre orchard, the land my wife gave her life to. He'd forged my signature, stolen $95,000 from his own wife. He thought I was just a grieving old man. He forgot I was a federal judge. One phone call destroyed everything he had. Thank you for being here. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and doing what's right? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. Quick note: this is a fictional story exploring complex family dynamics. The characters are imagined, but the moral questions are deeply real and worth reflecting on. Thursday, April 10th, 1:50 in the afternoon. The 2-hour drive from Charlottesville to Shenandoah Valley used to feel like coming home. Now, 2.5 years after Eleanor's death, it felt like driving toward a ghost. The Blue Ridge Mountains rose on either side of the highway, spring green and indifferent to my grief. Apple blossoms lined the road near our property, white and pink against the afternoon sky. Eleanor would have made me pull over to admire them. I'm Henry Morrison. Most people call me Hank. 66 years old, retired federal judge, widower. That last word still doesn't fit right in my mouth. Eleanor died 2.5 years ago. A truck ran a red light on Route 29, and in 3 seconds, 35 years of marriage ended on wet asphalt. She left behind 45 acres of apple orchard in Shenandoah Valley, a cider recipe she'd perfected over 2 decades, and a family that hasn't been the same since. The orchard had been Eleanor's masterpiece. She'd transformed a neglected plot into one of Virginia's finest small-batch cider operations. Every tree planted by her hands or under her direction. Every variety chosen with the precision of a scientist and the intuition of an artist. Winesap, Arkansas Black, Albemarle Pippin. She knew each tree the way some people know their children. After she died, I closed the cider shop. Couldn't stand behind that counter without seeing her there. Reading glasses sliding down her nose, explaining fermentation to tourists like she was letting them in on the world's best secret. The orchard kept producing, managed by a local crew, but the soul of the place went quiet. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 1:47. Bobby Hester, the fence contractor, was meeting me at 2. 3 sections of post and rail had come down over winter, and Eleanor would have scolded me for letting it go this long. She believed fences were promises made visible. Keep them standing. Keep your word. The orchard appeared around the bend. I turned onto the gravel drive, tires crunching over winter debris. The main farmhouse sat ahead, white clapboard with a wraparound porch, Blue Ridge filling the horizon behind it. To the right, past 6 rows of Albemarle Pippin trees just beginning to bud, sat Eleanor's cabin. 1 room, stone fireplace, her writing desk, shelves of journals, the old cider press she'd restored as decoration, a daybed beneath the window where she'd nap after long afternoons of recipe testing. It sat 200 yards from the main house, tucked into the orchard like a secret. I hadn't opened that door since the day of her funeral, but as I pulled up at 1:50, something stopped me cold. A black Tesla Model S, sleek and silent, was parked behind the cabin, hidden from the main drive. You'd only see it if you came from the east side, the way I always did. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Then I saw the smoke. Thin gray ribbons rising from the cabin chimney. I hadn't lit that fireplace in 2.5 years. No one had. No one should have. I parked and stepped out quietly. April wind carried apple blossom and something else. Voices. A woman's laugh, low and intimate. Then a man's response, and my blood went cold because I knew that voice. I'd heard it say its first word, cheer at its first baseball game, swear its oath at law school graduation. My son Marcus. I moved through the orchard rows on instinct, staying low between the pippin trees Eleanor had planted 30 years ago. Their branches provided cover as I approached the cabin's west side. The large window, the one Eleanor had insisted on for natural light, faced the mountains. From the side angle, I could see inside without being seen. My hands were shaking as I pressed against the stone wall Eleanor and I had built together during our 5th summer here. I edged toward the glass and looked inside. The cabin was dim, lit by firelight and one lamp on Eleanor's desk. My son Marcus, 38 years old, corporate lawyer in Richmond, married 9 years to Laura, father of Sophie and Ethan, sat at Eleanor's writing desk with a woman I had never seen. Dark hair, early 40s, elegant in a way that suggested money, or the appearance of it. They weren't in an embrace. It was worse. Spread across Eleanor's desk, the desk where she'd written 35 years of journals, where she'd perfected her cider recipe, where she'd composed letters to our grandchildren, were documents, legal documents. I could read the header from where I stood. Purchase and sale agreement. Property address: Morrison Orchard, Shenandoah Valley, Virginia. 45 acres. The woman pointed at something on the page. Marcus nodded and signed. Then she slid another document forward. I caught the words, power of attorney, and my name, Henry Morrison, in my son's handwriting. Not mine. He'd forged my signature. My knees didn't buckle. My hands didn't tremble. Something colder happened. 30 years on the federal bench clicked into place like a loaded chamber. I stepped back from the window, pressed against the stone wall, and breathed. Eleanor's voice in my memory. Calm and clear. Think first, Hank. Always think first, I thought. And then I acted. Not with rage, with precision, evidence. The words surfaced from 3 decades of federal jurisprudence. Cases aren't won with anger. They're won with documentation. I circled back through the orchard rows Eleanor had planted 35 years ago, each tree a witness to what my son was doing inside her sanctuary. I returned to my car, parked 50 yards from the cabin, and retrieved my phone. My hands were steady now. Taking action always helped. I moved along the tree line, staying behind the winesap row that ran parallel to the gravel path. From there, I had a clear angle on the Tesla's rear plate. Click. Virginia plates. Sharp focus. Timestamp. 2:03 in the afternoon. I repositioned near the Arkansas black trees on the cabin's north side. Through the window, the firelight cast their silhouettes against Eleanor's bookshelves. 2 figures, intimate and unhurried. Click. Cabin window. 2 silhouettes. Timestamp 2:03. Click. Wider angle. Cabin. Orchard. Mountains behind. Timestamp 2:04. I retreated to the main house and waited. Sat on the porch in Eleanor's rocker, the one she'd refinished the summer before she died, and watched. At 2:20, the cabin door opened. Marcus emerged first, stretching like a man without a care in the world. The woman followed. Dark hair past her shoulders, tailored coat, leather bag. She moved with confidence. Not nervous, not hurried. Marcus pulled her close. Kissed her. Long and slow, his hands on her waist, her fingers in his hair. Practiced. Familiar. This was not new. The ease between them spoke of months, not weeks. Click. The kiss. Clear as daylight. Timestamp 2:21. She walked to the Tesla, and he watched her leave with a smile I hadn't seen him give Laura in years. The Tesla disappeared down the east drive. I waited. 10 minutes later, a white Audi A5 appeared from behind the equipment barn. Same woman. She'd parked a second vehicle there, hidden. Smart. If anyone drove up, they'd see Marcus's car and nothing suspicious. She checked the spot where the Tesla had been, ensuring no tire marks were too obvious, then drove the Audi out the west entrance. Click. Audi plates. Virginia. Timestamp 2:32. Click. Same woman, different car. Timestamp 2:32. Two vehicles. Separate exits. She was careful, practiced. This wasn't her first time hiding. That fact alone told me more than any document could. At 2:45, Marcus's silver Honda Accord pulled away. He didn't look back at the cabin. Didn't notice my car parked near the main house. He was already on his phone, laughing at something. I waited another 15 minutes. Confirmed the property was empty. Then I walked to Eleanor's cabin, with a weight in my chest that felt like stone. The doorknob was cold under my hand. I hadn't touched it in 2.5 years. The last time I'd walked through this door, Eleanor's perfume still hung in the air. Now it was gone, replaced by wood smoke, expensive cologne, and something floral. Her perfume, not Eleanor's, the other woman's. Inside, the fireplace still glowed with embers. The daybed was neatly made, pillows arranged carefully. Eleanor's writing desk had been cleared of the documents I'd seen through the window. Almost. A single page had slipped beneath the desk. Caught between the leg and the baseboard, I crouched and pulled it free. A photocopy, slightly crumpled. Laurent Property Solutions. The header showed an address in Waynesboro, Virginia. Below it, a summary of terms. Purchaser: Shenandoah Ridge Development Group. Seller: Morrison. Family Trust. Purchase price: $1.2 million. My stomach lurched. The orchard, with Eleanor's brand, the cider operation rights, and 45 acres of prime Shenandoah Valley agricultural land, was worth at minimum $4.5 million. They were selling it for barely a quarter of its value. I searched further. In the desk's bottom drawer, I found more. A manila folder labeled Morrison, containing a photocopy of the forged power of attorney, my name in Marcus's handwriting. I'd seen enough forgeries across my bench to recognize one immediately. The letter formation was close, but not close enough. The H leaned wrong. The K trailed differently. Any competent handwriting analyst would flag it in minutes. Beneath the folder, Eleanor's journal sat open. Not on the shelf where it belonged, but open on the side table next to the daybed. Someone had been reading it. The page was dated September 2019. Eleanor's handwriting small and precise, the careful script of a woman who believed words mattered. I need to write this down because I can't say it to Hank yet. I'm worried about Marcus. He has his father's intelligence, but not his patience. That combination without character to anchor it can be dangerous. He wants everything fast: money, status, recognition. And I fear he'll cut corners to get there. I told him last Sunday that shortcuts always cost more in the end. He smiled and said, "Mom, I'm a lawyer. I know what I'm doing. That's exactly what worries me. God help me. I hope I'm wrong about my own son." The words blurred. I sat down in Eleanor's wicker chair by the window, the one where she'd spent 1,000 afternoons watching the Blue Ridge change colors, and I broke. Not quietly, not with dignity. The sobs came from somewhere deep. The place where grief and betrayal meet and become something unbearable. I cried for Eleanor, who had seen this coming and hoped she was wrong. I cried for Laura, who was probably at home in Richmond right now, putting dinner together, having no idea her husband was selling her future. I cried for Sophie and Ethan, who would carry scars from this no matter how carefully we handled it. And I cried because my son, the boy Eleanor and I had raised, the one who'd promised at 12 years old to take care of this orchard forever, had become exactly what his mother feared. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually the tears stopped. My breath steadied, and my judge's mind reasserted itself with cold clarity. I needed help, professional help. Someone who could dig deeper, find out who this woman was, trace the money, map the pattern. I pulled out my phone and called Frank Delaney. Frank Delaney answered on the first ring. 25 years of friendship meant no small talk was necessary. Hank Morrison. Haven't heard from you since Eleanor's service. How are you holding up? My voice came out rougher than I intended. Frank, I need you. Today. It's about Marcus. And it might be federal. A pause. The kind of pause that comes from a man who spent 20 years in the FBI before going private. When he spoke again, the casual warmth was gone, replaced by the focused tone I'd heard in 100 depositions. Tell me where. The orchard. I'll be here. Give me 2 hours. He arrived at 5:15, stepping out of his dusty Suburban, with the compact efficiency of a man who'd spent 2 decades chasing criminals across 3 states. 65 years old, silver crew cut, reading glasses hanging from his collar. He looked like someone's grandfather. That was what made him effective. We skipped pleasantries and went straight to the cabin. I showed him everything. The photographs on my phone, the Tesla and Audi plates, the partial contract from Laurent Property Solutions, the forged power of attorney, Eleanor's journal entry. He studied each piece without comment, turning pages with latex gloves he'd pulled from his jacket pocket, like it was reflex. I'll run these plates tonight, he said, holding my phone at arm's length to study the Tesla photo. The company name, too. Laurent Property Solutions. And I'll need to pull Marcus's financials. Bank records. Credit cards. He looked at me over his reading glasses. You want the truth, Hank? All of it? Because sometimes what we find is worse than what we imagine. I want everything, I said. Whatever it is. He nodded once. Give me 48 hours. I'll have preliminary results by Monday morning. He paused at the cabin door, looked back at Eleanor's chair, her bookshelves, her journals on the shelf. I'm sorry, Hank. This place deserved better. After Frank left, I drove back to Charlottesville in silence. No radio. No phone calls. Just the Blue Ridge fading in my rearview mirror and Eleanor's journal entry repeating in my mind. He has your intelligence, but not your patience. God help me. I hope I'm wrong. She wasn't wrong. Saturday evening. 2 days later. A family dinner at Marcus's house in Richmond that had been planned for weeks. The colonial revival in the Fan District that Laura had fallen in love with 8 years ago. Blue shutters, boxwood hedges, everything picture perfect from the street. I used to believe the inside matched. Laura answered the door with Ethan on her hip and Sophie behind her. The smile she gave me didn't quite reach her eyes. I'd seen that smile before on witnesses who were holding something together with willpower alone. Hank, come in. Dinner's almost ready. Sophie made the salad herself. Sophie, 8 years old and already carrying too much, hugged my waist. Hi, Grandpa. I set the table with the nice plates. I crouched to her level. Those eyes, Eleanor's eyes, deep brown and far too observant for a child her age. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Very grown up of you. Marcus appeared from his study, phone in hand, barely registering my presence. Hey, Dad. Work thing. Give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes became 15. Laura served the pot roast. Cut Ethan's food. Reminded Sophie about elbows. Marcus returned, sat down, checked his phone under the table 3 times before the first course was finished. Daddy, put your phone away. Sophie's voice was small but firm. You promise Sundays and Saturdays are family time. Marcus's jaw tightened. Sophie, I'm handling something important. You always say that. Enough. The word came out sharper than it should have. Laura flinched. Ethan's lip trembled. Sophie went silent, staring at her plate. I watched my son with new eyes. The impatience, the distraction, the way he occupied the same room as his family, without actually being present. Laura compensated for all of it, smoothing every rough edge, filling every silence, keeping the machinery of this household running, while Marcus contributed nothing but his physical presence. And barely that. After dinner, Marcus stood. Got to take this call. He walked to the backyard, phone already at his ear, and I heard his voice drop to something soft. something intimate. The voice he used to use with Laura. I helped Laura clear the dishes. We worked in silence until she dropped a serving spoon. It clattered against the tile floor, and she stared at it like she'd forgotten how her hands worked. I'm so clumsy lately, she murmured, bending to pick it up. Her hands shook visibly. Laura, are you all right? You look exhausted. The smile again. Practiced. Automatic. Just busy. The kids, teaching, the house. I'm fine, Hank. Really. She wasn't fine. The dark circles under her eyes. The weight she'd lost. The way she startled at small noises. I recognized it all. I'd seen it in courtrooms for 30 years. The body language of someone living under sustained deception. Sophie appeared at my elbow, tugging my sleeve. Grandpa, can I tell you something? I knelt to her level. Of course, sweetheart. Her brown eyes filled with tears. Big tears for an 8-year-old. Mommy doesn't sleep anymore. I hear her walking around the house at night, up and down the stairs. And sometimes I hear her crying in the bathroom, but when I knock, she says she's fine. Sophie wiped her nose with her wrist. Is Mommy sick? Like Grandma Eleanor was sick? My chest cracked open. No, sweetheart. Mommy's not sick. She's going through something hard. Can you fix it, Grandpa? You always fix everything. I pulled Sophie into a hug, held her tight. I'm going to try. I promise. I left at 8, kissing Sophie and Ethan goodnight, thanking Laura for dinner with an embrace that lingered one beat longer than usual. She noticed. Confusion flickered across her face, then gratitude. Driving home on Interstate 64. Sophie's words circled like vultures. Mommy doesn't sleep anymore. Mommy cries in the bathroom. Can you fix it, Grandpa? My phone rang as I passed Short Pump. Frank Delaney. I pulled over immediately. Hank, we need to meet Monday morning. 9 sharp. My office. His voice was different. The professional detachment I knew so well had an edge to it now. Something harder underneath. What did you find? Not over the phone. But Hank, this isn't just an affair. The woman, her name is Dominique Laurent, 41 years old, and she's done this before. Twice. The same pattern. Targets agricultural property families through the sons. My grip tightened on the wheel. There's more. Your son has been moving money, large amounts, from his joint accounts with Laura, over the past 16 months, close to $95,000. Silence. The highway hummed around me. Cars passed. Lives continuing. Oblivious. Monday, Frank. 9 o'clock. I hung up and sat in the dark on the shoulder of the interstate, watching headlights stream past. Worse than an affair. A pattern. $95,000. Sophie's voice in my head. Can you fix it, Grandpa? I didn't know yet if I could fix it. But I was certain of one thing. By Monday afternoon, I would know exactly what my son had done, and exactly how to make him answer for it. Monday morning. 9 o'clock sharp. Frank's office occupied the second floor of a converted textile mill on Charlottesville's east side. Exposed brick, industrial windows, the permanent smell of strong coffee. 3 rooms filled with filing cabinets, dual monitors, and the quiet hum of a man who'd spent 20 years tracking people who didn't want to be found. He was waiting with 2 thick folders and a laptop open on his desk. No coffee offered. No small talk. That told me everything about what he'd found. Sit down, Hank. I sat. Frank opened the first folder and placed a photograph in front of me. A dark-haired woman, early 40s, standing beside a younger man at what appeared to be a vineyard. Her arm through his, both smiling. The image was dated November 2021. Dominique Laurent, Frank said. Born Dominique Marchand, in Lyon, France. Naturalized U.S. citizen since 2008. Married once, briefly, to an American banker. Divorced 2012. No children. Currently lives in Alexandria, Virginia. On paper, she's a property consultant, specializing in agricultural estates. He tapped the photograph. The man beside her is Tyler Barrett, 34 years old, son of Thomas Barrett, who owned a 200-acre vineyard in Fauquier County, Virginia. Assessed value, $1.8 million. Frank's voice took on the clinical cadence I recognized from federal depositions. Dominique met Tyler at a Virginia Wine Council event in October 2021. Affair lasted 11 months. During that time, she convinced Tyler that his father's vineyard was underperforming and needed professional management. She introduced a development group, Shenandoah Ridge Development, as potential buyers who would lease back the vineyard to the family. I leaned forward. Shenandoah Ridge Development. The same name on the contract in Eleanor's cabin. Same company. Frank confirmed. Tyler signed a power of attorney on his father's behalf. Forged, just like yours. The vineyard sold for $600,000. Market value was $1.8 million. Thomas Barrett found out 3 months after closing. By then, Dominique had disappeared. Tyler's marriage ended. His father cut him off entirely. The family hasn't spoken since. He slid a second folder across the desk. Victim number 2. James Whitfield, 67, retired farmer. 900 acres of tobacco-turned-organic produce in Alamance County, North Carolina. His son Derek, 39, met Dominique at a sustainable agriculture conference in Durham, March 2022. Same pattern. Affair, 8 months. Fake consultation about modernizing the farm. Power of attorney. Sale to a different shell company, but same developer network behind it. Farm sold for $350,000. Actual value, $900,000. Another photograph. Different man, same woman. Dominique at a restaurant booth, her hand resting on Derek Whitfield's forearm, both of them laughing. The intimacy identical to what I'd seen through Eleanor's window. Frank continued. Derek Whitfield's wife left him. His father had a stroke from the stress. Died 4 months later. Derek tried to file a police report, but the paperwork was technically legal on its surface. Forged signatures are hard to prove without the original signer's cooperation, and Thomas Barrett was too ashamed to pursue it. I stared at the 2 photographs side by side. Same woman. Same posture. Same practiced intimacy. Same results. Families destroyed. Land stolen. Lives shattered. The pattern is identical, Frank said. She targets agricultural properties, specifically family-owned operations with significant land value. She identifies the son, usually mid-30s to early 40s, usually married, usually feeling overshadowed by the family legacy. She creates a romantic relationship. Somewhere around month 6 or 7, she introduces the business opportunity. They sign. She takes a commission from the developer, estimated 15 to 20% of the sale price. Then she vanishes. How much has Marcus given her directly? I asked. Frank pulled up bank statements on his laptop. Yellow highlighting marched down the pages, like a disease spreading. Over the past 16 months, $95,000 has been withdrawn from Marcus and Laura's joint checking and savings accounts. He scrolled through transactions. Started small, $2,000 here, $3,000 there. Easy to explain as business expenses, client dinners, professional development. But in the last 5 months, the amounts escalated. $15,000 in December, $20,000 in January. The largest single withdrawal was $35,000 in March. Last month, where did it go? Frank clicked to another screen. Luxury hotels. The Jefferson in Richmond. The Salamander Resort in Middleburg. Designer shopping at Tyson's Galleria. Spa weekends. High-end restaurants throughout Northern Virginia. 0 legitimate business expenses. All personal. All for her. My stomach turned. Laura's savings. Sophie's college fund. Ethan's future. Spent on hotel suites, and designer handbags for a woman who saw my son as nothing but a transaction. There's one more thing. Frank's voice dropped. He pulled up a document. 3 weeks ago, Dominique registered a business entity in Virginia. Laurent Property Solutions. Marcus is listed as co-managing member. Is it real? The registration is real. The business isn't. Address is a UPS store in Waynesboro. No state tax filing. No business license. No actual clients. The website is a template. Stock photos. Generated testimonials. It exists solely to give Marcus the illusion that they're building something legitimate together. Frank paused, then slid one final document across the desk. A printed email. My eyes found the relevant lines immediately. From Marcus Morrison to Dominique Laurent. Date: March 22nd. Subject: Timeline. Once the farm sale closes and Laurent Property Solutions starts generating revenue from commissions, I'll file for divorce. Laura doesn't need to know about the new company income. I can structure the settlement before she discovers the full financial picture. Then we start fresh. Together. He was planning to sell the orchard, pocket commission through the fake company, then divorce Laura while hiding the money. Except none of it was real. There was no commission coming. No legitimate business. Just a con artist extracting everything my son had before disappearing the way she disappeared on Tyler Barrett and Derek Whitfield. I set the email down carefully on Frank's desk. She's not just taking his money, I said quietly. She's taking our land. Eleanor's land. 45 acres that my wife spent 35 years building into something extraordinary, for a fraction of its worth. To a developer who'll bulldoze the orchard and build townhouses. Frank nodded slowly. What do you want to do, Hank? I looked at the photograph of Eleanor on his desk. She was standing in the orchard, autumn light in her hair, holding a basket of Albemarle pippin apples. Smiling at the camera like the whole world made sense. I know exactly what I'm going to do, I said. I'm going to make one phone call. Frank raised an eyebrow. One call? I stood up, gathering the folders. When you've spent 30 years on the federal bench, you learn something about the system. You learn where the levers are, which ones to pull, and who pulls them faster than anyone else. I only need one call, Frank. But it's going to be the right one. I drove home from Frank's office with the folders on the passenger seat. Eleanor's photograph looked up at me from the top of the stack. That smile. That confidence. She'd built something extraordinary on 45 acres of Shenandoah Valley dirt. And my son was signing it away to a woman who'd done this twice before and would do it again. I parked in my driveway in Charlottesville and sat there for a long time. The house was quiet. It had been quiet for 2.5 years. Eleanor's garden out front was overgrown because I couldn't bring myself to tend it the way she had. Everything I touched these days seemed to be falling into disrepair, but not the orchard. Not her legacy. Not if I had anything left in me. I went inside, poured a glass of water, and sat at my desk in the study. 30 years of federal service stared back at me from the walls. Framed commendations, photographs with colleagues. My appointment letter, signed by the president. The gavel Eleanor had given me as a retirement gift, mounted in a shadow box with an inscription, "Justice is love made visible." I opened my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in over a year. Judge Patricia Coleman, 63 years old, Chief Judge of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond. We'd served together on the federal bench for 18 years before she was elevated to the appellate court. She'd spoken at Eleanor's funeral, called me every month for the first year after, then every few months when I stopped returning calls. Patricia wasn't just a colleague. She was the kind of friend forged in the trenches of federal law, someone who understood that the system we'd sworn to uphold wasn't abstract. It was personal. Every case was someone's family falling apart. I dialed. 2 rings. Hank Morrison. It's been too long. How are you? Her voice was warm but sharp. Patricia never wasted time on pretense. Patricia, I need your help. It's urgent. It's about Marcus. A pause. The warmth remained, but I heard her sit up straighter. Heard the shift from friend to judge. Tell me. I told her everything. Methodically. Chronologically. The way I'd structured 1,000 judicial opinions. The cabin. The documents. The forged power of attorney. Frank's investigation. 2 previous victims. The fake company. The developer connection. $95,000 stolen from my daughter-in-law's accounts. And Marcus's email planning to sell the family orchard for 1/4 of its value, hide the proceeds, and divorce his wife while she was blind to everything. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, the silence stretched long enough that I heard the clock ticking in my study. Hank, she said finally. Her voice was careful now. Measured. You understand what you're asking me to set in motion? Yes. This will destroy Marcus. Professionally. Financially. Possibly criminally. If the forgery charge sticks. You're his father, and you're asking me to help bring the full weight of the federal system down on your own son. I looked at Eleanor's photograph on my desk. At Sophie's school picture next to it. 8 years old. Brown eyes. Asking me to fix it. He's destroying himself, Patricia. I'm just making sure he can't take anyone else down with him. Laura doesn't know. My grandchildren don't know. And there are 2 families in Virginia and North Carolina who were destroyed by this same woman while no one stopped her. I'm stopping it now. Another pause. Then Patricia's voice shifted into the register I'd heard her use from the bench. Authoritative. Precise. Final. All right. Here's what I can do. First, I'll contact Judge Harrison in the Western District. We can get an emergency injunction to freeze any pending real estate transactions involving the Morrison Family Trust. That stops the sale immediately. Second, the forged power of attorney is a federal crime if it crossed state lines or involved federally insured institutions. I'll flag it directly to the FBI's Richmond field office. They'll open a preliminary investigation within 72 hours. Third, if this Dominique Laurent has a pattern across multiple states, that's potentially RICO eligible. Interstate fraud conspiracy. The FBI can pull her entire history. She paused. Hank, once I make these calls, there's no pulling it back. The wheels start turning and they don't stop. Not for you. Not for Marcus. Not for anyone. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about Sophie's tears. Mommy doesn't sleep anymore. I thought about Laura's shaking hands. I thought about Thomas Barrett's vineyard. Gone. James Whitfield's father. Dead from the stress. I thought about Eleanor's journal. He has your intelligence but not your patience. I'm certain, Patricia. Make the calls. Done. You'll have confirmation by end of business today. And Hank, for what it's worth, Eleanor would be proud of you. This is the hardest kind of courage, the kind that costs you something personal. After we hung up, I sat motionless in my study for a long time. One phone call, 3 minutes and 47 seconds. That's all it took to set my son's destruction in motion. The emergency injunction would freeze the land sale within hours. The FBI would begin investigating Dominique Laurent by Thursday. And Marcus, my son, the boy who'd promised his mother he'd care for the orchard, would eventually face consequences he couldn't talk or charm his way out of. I felt no satisfaction. Only the grim certainty that I'd done what was necessary. Tuesday morning, I met Nathan Webb at his law office in downtown Charlottesville. 45 years old, former prosecutor turned family and real estate attorney. Sharp. Methodical. Recommended by 3 former colleagues. His office was modern, organized, efficient. I spread Frank's folders across his conference table and walked him through everything. He listened with the focused attention of a man who'd built cases for 20 years. When I finished, Nathan leaned back and removed his glasses. The real estate fraud angle is strong, he said. Forged power of attorney. Sale at grossly below market value. Shell company involvement. We can void the contract and pursue civil damages against Laurent Property Solutions and the developer. He paused, tapping his glasses against the table. For Laura, we file for fault-based divorce. Virginia recognizes adultery and financial misconduct as grounds. The $95,000 is dissipation of marital assets. She can demand reimbursement plus a significantly larger share of remaining property. Combined with the planned asset concealment in his email, we can argue for primary custody on grounds of demonstrated poor judgment. Nathan looked at me directly. Your son is a corporate lawyer, Hank. He should have known better. That's what makes this so damning in front of a judge. He can't claim ignorance. He can't claim naivety. He chose this. I know, I said. That's why it has to be done right. Nathan nodded. I'll draft the filings this week. But we need to coordinate timing with the FBI and your daughter-in-law. She needs to know before we file anything. Can you handle that? I'll tell her, I said. Soon, he gathered the folders. One more thing, Hank. You're going to lose your son over this. You understand that. I stood, buttoning my coat. I'd rather lose my son than lose my grandchildren's future, and I'd rather he face consequences now than become the kind of man who never faces them at all. Nathan extended his hand. Then let's do this right. Wednesday evening. April 16th. Another dinner at Marcus's house in Richmond. The second in 5 days. This time, I wasn't observing out of suspicion. I was cataloging, building the emotional case alongside the legal one, documenting what my son's choices were doing to the people who depended on him. Laura opened the door looking thinner than Saturday. 4 days, and she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. Her collarbones stood out beneath her sweater. The smile was the same, though. Practiced. Automatic. The mask she wore for everyone. Hank. So nice of you to come again. Marcus is upstairs on a call. He'll be down in a minute. Marcus came down at 6:20. Dinner was at 6. He didn't apologize for being late. Didn't seem to register that Laura had been holding Ethan on one hip while stirring gravy and directing Sophie to set the table simultaneously. He sat down, checked his phone, and began eating without waiting for anyone. The conversation was strained. I asked Sophie about school. She brightened slightly, telling me about a science project on apple trees. She'd chosen the topic herself. I knew why. Grandma Eleanor grew apples, she said proudly. I'm doing my project about her orchard. My teacher said I could bring photos. Marcus glanced up from his phone. That's nice, Soph. His attention returned to the screen within seconds. His thumb scrolled through something with practiced ease. Texts. From the way his expression softened briefly before hardening back into indifference, I knew exactly who was writing him. At 7:15, Marcus pushed back from the table. I've got a client meeting downtown. Shouldn't be more than an hour or two. Sophie's fork stopped midway to her mouth. But you said we'd watch the movie tonight. You promised. Something next week, okay? This can't wait. You said that last time. Sophie's voice was quiet. Resigned. An 8-year-old who'd learned that her father's promises were made of smoke. Marcus didn't respond. He grabbed his keys and jacket, kissed the top of Sophie's head without looking at her, and walked out. The door closed. Ethan, who'd been watching with wide eyes from his booster seat, said in his small, clear voice, "Daddy's always mad." Laura flinched. "No, sweetheart. Daddy's just busy." Ethan shook his head with the stubborn certainty of a 5-year-old. "No. He's mad. He yells when you're not here, Mommy." At the wall. Laura's face tightened, but she recovered quickly. "Who wants ice cream?" "Sophie. Can you get the bowls?" Sophie slid off her chair without a word. She took Ethan's hand and led him to the kitchen. I watched her go. 8 years old and already the caretaker. Already the one holding pieces together that shouldn't be her responsibility. She'd learned it from watching Laura. The quiet competence of women keeping families alive, while the men who should be helping burned everything down instead. I helped Laura clear the table. We worked in silence, the way we often did, comfortable but heavy. As she reached for the serving dish on the high shelf, her hand spasmed. The glass slipped. It shattered against the hardwood floor, sending shards across the kitchen in a spray of crystal. Laura stared at the broken pieces. Her hands trembled at her sides. "I'm so clumsy lately," she said. Same words as Saturday. Same flat tone. Same way of making herself smaller. "I'm sorry, Hank. Let me just clean this up." I crouched beside her. "Laura, look at me." She looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Not from this moment. From days of accumulated tears she'd been hiding. "You're not clumsy," I said gently. "You're exhausted. And whatever is happening in this house, you don't have to carry it alone." For 1 second her mask cracked. I saw the fear underneath. The knowing without wanting to know. The desperate hope that if she didn't name it, it wouldn't be real. Then Sophie's voice from the kitchen doorway. "Mommy, Ethan's getting ice cream on the floor." The mask snapped back. Laura stood, wiped her eyes with her sleeve, and walked toward the kitchen. "I'm coming, sweetie. Let me help." I swept up the broken glass alone, each piece catching the light. Sharp. Dangerous. Like the truth I was about to deliver. At 8:30 I said my goodbyes. Sophie hugged me at the door, holding on 2 beats longer than usual. "Grandpa." She whispered into my shoulder. "Can you come back soon? It's better when you're here." I held her tight. "I'll always come back, sweetheart. I promise." I drove toward the interstate with a heaviness that pressed on my chest like a physical weight. Ethan's voice. "Daddy's always mad." He yells at the wall. Sophie leading her brother to the kitchen like a tiny adult. Laura's shaking hands. The broken glass. Eleanor's voice found me somewhere on Route 250. Clear as if she were sitting beside me. That last hospital room. 3 days before the accident took her. Instead of the cancer we'd been watching, she'd grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "Hank, promise me something. Anything, Eleanor. Watch over Marcus. But don't protect him from himself. He has your intelligence. He has my stubbornness. But character, Hank. Character has to be chosen. Every single day. If he stops choosing it, show him what happens. Show him consequences. Even if it breaks your heart," I'd promised. And then the accident took her before the cancer could. And I'd spent 2.5 years failing to keep that promise. Failing to see what Marcus was becoming. Failing to watch over him the way she'd asked. Not anymore. I pulled into my driveway at 9:45. Sat in the dark car for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Laura. She answered on the second ring. Voice cautious. "Hank? Is everything okay? Laura, can you come to the orchard Friday morning? 10 o'clock. We need to talk about Marcus. About your marriage. About some things I've discovered." Long silence. I could hear her breathing. Could hear the house behind her. Quiet now. Children asleep. Marcus still gone. "Should I be scared?" she asked softly. I closed my eyes. Thought about what I was about to do to this woman's world. The world she'd built around a man who was systematically dismantling it. "Yes," I said. "But you won't be alone. I promise you that." Another pause. Then, barely above a whisper. "Okay. Friday. 10 o'clock. I'll be there. Come alone, Laura. Don't tell Marcus." "Okay." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my car, staring at the house Eleanor and I had shared for 28 years. The empty windows, the overgrown garden, the silence. Thursday evening I would confront Marcus. Give him one chance to face Laura himself. And Friday morning, regardless of what my son chose, Laura would learn the truth. Everything. The affair, the money, the con, the plan to sell her future and leave her with nothing. 2 conversations. 2 explosions. 1 family detonated from the inside. I thought about Sophie's arms around my neck. It's better when you're here, Grandpa. I was going to make it better. Even if making it better meant tearing everything apart first. Thursday evening. April 17th. 7 o'clock. I stood at the head of my dining table and waited. Folders arranged at precise intervals. Photographs face down. Frank's laptop open. Screen dark. Everything deliberate. Everything controlled. I'd called Marcus that morning. Come to my house tonight. 7. Come alone. He'd hesitated. Tonight's tough, Dad. I've got a brief due. And this isn't optional, Marcus. Be here. He arrived at 7:02, keys spinning around one finger. Dress shirt open at the collar. The easy confidence of a man who believed he was the smartest person in every room. Eleanor had seen it years ago. Intelligence without patience. Ambition without character. Hey, Dad. What's going on? I gestured toward the dining room without answering. He walked in and stopped. Saw the folders. The laptop. His smile faltered. What is this? Sit down. He sat. I remained standing. 30 years of courtroom authority in my posture. I turned over the first photograph. Eleanor's cabin. 2 silhouettes against firelight. Time stamped April 10th. Marcus's face drained white. Dad, this isn't what it looks like. Second photograph. The kiss outside the cabin door. His hands on her waist. Time stamped. 2:21. I can explain. It was just once. She doesn't mean. Her name is Dominique Laurent, I said, cutting through his denial like a blade. 41. Alexandria. You've been seeing her 16 months. Not once, Marcus. 16 months. His face shifted from white to gray. You investigated me? Your own son? Something inside me snapped. You forged my signature. To sell your mother's orchard for 1/4 of its value. You brought that woman to Eleanor's cabin, spread documents across the desk where your mother wrote letters to your children. And you ask, what gives me the right? Marcus shrank. The arrogance collapsed. The business is real, Dad. Dominique and I are building something. When the commissions come in, I'll pay everything back. The doorbell rang. Marcus looked up, confused. Frank Delaney stepped inside. Laptop bag. Professional expression. He sat at the table and opened the first file without preamble. Tyler Barrett. 34. Son of a vineyard owner in Fauquier County. Met Dominique at a wine event. October 2021. 11-month affair. Forged power of attorney. Vineyard valued at $1.8 million. Sold for $600,000 to Shenandoah Ridge Development. Same developer in your contract, Mr. Morrison. Tyler's marriage ended. Father and son haven't spoken since. A photograph appeared. Tyler and Dominique at a restaurant. Same intimacy I'd seen through the cabin window. That's different, Marcus said weakly. We're different. Derek Whitfield. Frank continued without pause. 39. Farmer, North Carolina. March 2022. 8 months. Same pattern. Farm sold for $350, worth $900,000. His father had a stroke from the stress. Died 4 months later. Another photograph. Different man. Same woman. Same practiced smile. Frank opened a recovered email. From Dominique to a friend during the Barrett affair. He read aloud. Farm families are gold mines. The sons always think they're too smart to get conned. They're already guilty from the affair. They won't report me because they'd have to admit what they did. Perfect setup. Marcus's hands began trembling. Laurent Property Solutions, Frank said. Your business together. Registered address, UPS store in Waynesboro. No tax filing, no license, no clients. The website is a template. Stock photos, fake testimonials. He pulled up bank statements. Yellow highlighting marching down the pages. $95,000 from your joint accounts with Laura. Every dollar traceable to luxury hotels, restaurants, shopping. Zero business expenses. Zero. Then Frank played the recording. Audio from Tyler Barrett's phone. Dominique's voice. Amused and careless. Family men are the easiest marks. They're already guilty. Already hiding. They'll hand you everything and thank you for taking it. When it's over, they're too ashamed to chase you. The recording ended. Silence. Marcus looked at me. Eyes red. Wet. The arrogance entirely gone. In its place, the face of a man who has just understood he was the fool in someone else's story. "Dad," he whispered. "I thought she loved me." 5 words that nearly broke me. I sat down across from him. Anger, replaced by something harder. Grief. "She never loved you, Marcus. You were a mark." Number 3. On her list. A sound came from him. Not quite crying. Deeper. The sound of a self-image shattering completely. I let the silence hold. Then spoke. "Tomorrow morning at 10, Laura is coming here. I'm going to tell her everything. The affair. The money. Dominique's pattern. Your plan to hide assets. And divorce her." His head snapped up. "Dad, please. I'll fix it. I'll tell her myself. Give me time. You've had 16 months of time." "Time's up." I stood. "You have 2 choices. Be here tomorrow. Face your wife. Take responsibility. Or be a coward and let me do it alone." Marcus stumbled to his feet. Pale. Unsteady. He walked past me without answering. I heard his car start. Heard it. Pull away. Into the dark. Frank appeared beside me in the doorway. "What do you think he'll do?" I watched the taillights disappear. My son. Broken. Finally seeing the truth. But seeing it and choosing to act on it were different things entirely. "I don't know," I said. "But tomorrow at 10, we'll find out." Friday morning, April 18th, 9:55. I watched Laura's silver Subaru pull slowly into my driveway. She sat behind the wheel for a full minute, motionless, gathering courage, preparing for whatever was coming. Then she stepped out, smoothed her blouse, and walked toward my door like someone approaching a cliff edge. Marcus hadn't come. The coward's choice. I opened the door before she could knock. She dressed carefully. Nice blouse. Hair pulled back. Minimal makeup applied over dark circles she couldn't quite hide. Her hands gripped her purse strap with white knuckles. "Come in. Can I get you coffee?" She shook her head. I don't think I could keep anything down. We sat at the dining table. The same table where Marcus had broken apart 12 hours ago. I'd cleared his evidence and replaced it with Laura's. Same facts. Different presentation. Gentler, but no less devastating. Laura placed her purse beside her chair with deliberate precision. Controlled movements. The discipline of someone holding herself together by force of will. She looked around the room. "Where's Marcus?" "I told him to be here." "I told him too." "He chose not to come." Something flickered across her face. Not surprise. Confirmation. A fear she'd been carrying for months. Suddenly validated by his absence alone. So it's very bad. Not a question. I sat across from her. "Laura, how long have you known something was wrong?" Long silence. Her fingers traced the wood grain of the table. Then softly, 6 months. Maybe longer. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. What were the signs? She looked up. Perfume on his shirts. Not mine. Something French and expensive. The late nights that multiplied. Phone face down whenever I walked into the room. He stopped touching me entirely. Not just intimately. He wouldn't hold my hand. Wouldn't brush my shoulder passing in the hallway. like I was a stranger living in his house. Her voice stayed eerily level. The distance. That was the worst part. He was physically present but completely gone. Like talking to a photograph of someone you used to know. Why didn't you say anything? Because if I said it out loud, it would be real. And if it was real, everything would fall apart. Sophie's stability. Ethan's routine. The life I'd built. She paused. I kept hoping I was wrong. Kept hoping if I was patient enough, good enough, it would come back. Whatever I'd lost. I pulled the folder across the table. You didn't lose anything, Laura. He threw it away. I need you to look at these. You deserve the truth. She opened the folder slowly. The first photograph. Eleanor's cabin. Window. Marcus. And a dark-haired woman. Intimate silhouettes against firelight. Laura stared for a long time. No tears. Just silence. Her finger traced the outline of the cabin. That's Eleanor's place, she said. Voice eerily calm. He brought her to his mother's cabin. Yes. Silence. Then, how long? 16 months. She closed her eyes. When she opened them. And? The money. I pulled out the bank statements. Yellow highlighting marking $95,000 in withdrawals over 16 months. Laura's fingers traced the numbers the way she'd traced the cabin photograph. Slowly. Carefully. Like reading Braille. Our savings, she whispered. Sophie's college fund. Ethan's account. My summer teaching income. All of it. I showed her the fake company registration. Laurent Property Solutions. UPS store address in Waynesboro. Explained the pattern. Tyler Barrett in Virginia. Derek Whitfield in North Carolina. Same woman. Same method. Same devastation. She's a con artist, I said. She's done this twice before. Targets family properties through the sons. Takes the money. Sells the land to developers at a fraction of value. Disappears. Laura processed quietly. Turning pages. Studying photographs of Dominique with previous victims. Reading Frank's investigative summary. Her calm was almost frightening. No tears, no outbursts, just the methodical absorption of information. Then I pulled out Marcus's email. The final piece. There's one more thing, Laura. This is the hardest part. She read it once. Then again. Her lips moved slightly with the words. Once the farm sale closes, I'll file for divorce. Laura doesn't need to know about the new company income. I can structure the settlement before she discovers the full financial picture. She set the paper down carefully. Precisely. The way you set down something explosive. He was going to wait, she said. Wait until he thought the money was flowing. Then divorce me. Structure everything so I wouldn't know what he'd hidden. Yes. That was his plan. Laura stood abruptly. Walked to the window. Stared out at my overgrown garden for a full minute. Her back was straight. Her shoulders still. But I could see her reflection in the glass. And in that reflection, something was changing. The resignation was burning away. In its place, something harder. Sharper. The look of a woman who has finally stopped hoping and started deciding. When she turned back, her eyes were different. Clear. Focused. The trembling was gone. I want a divorce, she said. And I want full custody of my children. Nathan Webb is ready to take your case. One of Virginia's best family and property attorneys. Everything is prepared. Laura's composure cracked for the first time. Not into weakness. Into gratitude. So fierce. It looked like pain. Her eyes filled. Hank. I don't know how. I'm a part-time teacher. I can't afford. I held up my hand. Stop. You won't pay a cent. Nathan's retainer is covered. Everything is covered. But, Laura, your family. You've been my family since the day you married my son. That hasn't changed. If anything, it's more true now than ever. The tears fell. First time since she'd arrived. Not the helpless tears of a victim. The hot, fierce tears of someone being seen, being chosen, being protected for perhaps the first time in years. Sophie asked me if I was sick, she said, voice breaking, like Eleanor. Because she hears me up at night. My 8-year-old is worrying about me instead of worrying about 4th grade. I know. Sophie told me too. Laura wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. A practical gesture. No tissue. No delicacy. Just clearing the decks so she could think. What happens next? Monday morning. Nathan's office. We file. Fault-based divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. Reimbursement of the $95,000. Primary custody based on Marcus's demonstrated poor judgment. Given the affair, the fraud, and the forged documents, you'll receive a significantly larger share of remaining assets. Laura nodded. Processing. Then, he'll hate me. He did this to himself. You're refusing to be his victim. There's a difference. She picked up her purse. Stood straighter than I'd seen her stand in months. At the door, she stopped. Turned back. Thank you, Hank. For not protecting him at my expense. For choosing me. I met her eyes. I didn't choose you over Marcus, Laura. I chose what's right. Sometimes those happen to be the same thing. She hugged me. Quick. Fierce. When she pulled back, there was iron in her eyes. Monday, she said. I'll be there. After her car disappeared down the street, I stood in my doorway for a long time. The morning was bright. Birds singing. Spring unfolding like it always did. Indifferent to the lives being remade beneath it. I just detonated my daughter-in-law's world. And somehow, watching her drive away with that iron in her eyes, I believed she was going to be all right. Saturday afternoon. April 19th. Abigail's pickup truck appeared on my street at 1:15. Gravel dust still clinging to the wheel wells from the country roads outside Staunton. She parked crooked, the way she always did when she was in a hurry, and strode up my walkway with the determined gait of a woman who'd spent her career handling emergencies. My daughter, 32 years old, large animal veterinarian. Eleanor's practicality in a younger body. She had her mother's hands, strong and steady, built for difficult work. And Eleanor's eyes, the same brown that Sophie had inherited. 3 generations of women who saw things clearly whether they wanted to or not. I'd called her that morning, told her to come, told her it was about Marcus. She'd asked no questions, just said, I'm on my way. She walked through my front door without knocking, looked at my face, read everything there in 2 seconds. How bad? Sit down, Abby. I told her everything. Start to finish. The cabin. The photographs. Dominique's pattern. The 2 previous families destroyed. The $95,000. The forged power of attorney. The fake company. Marcus's email about selling the orchard, hiding money, divorcing Laura. The phone call to Patricia. The FBI. Nathan's legal strategy. Laura's visit yesterday. Her decision to file. Abigail listened without interrupting. Her face went through stages. Confusion. Disbelief. Then something cold settled behind her eyes. Not shock. Recognition. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke. Her voice flat and controlled. Mom warned us. She wrote it in her journal years ago. I read it once when I was helping organize her things after the funeral. Something about Marcus having your brain, but not your patience. She saw this coming, Dad. She just hoped she was wrong. She stood abruptly. Walked to the window. Turned back. What do you need from me? I need you here. For Laura. For Sophie and Ethan. And I need you at the table. When we plan what happens next. Abigail nodded once. Done. What else? We're not done yet. There's a confrontation coming. and I want you to be part of it. At 2:30, Laura arrived. Nathan Webb followed 10 minutes later with his briefcase and a legal pad already half filled with notes. The four of us gathered around my kitchen table. Coffee poured. Documents spread. The War Counsel Eleanor would have hated and respected in equal measure. Nathan spoke first, outlining the legal timeline. Monday, we filed the divorce petition. Fault-based. Simultaneously, we file a motion to void the property sale contract due to forged authorization. The FBI's investigation into Dominique runs parallel but separate. He looked at Laura. Your divorce and the criminal case are two different tracks. Even if the FBI case takes months, your divorce can proceed immediately. We have more than enough evidence for fault grounds. Laura nodded. She looked different today. Still tired, but the trembling was gone. Something solid had settled into her posture overnight. My phone buzzed. A number I'd been expecting. I answered on speaker. Professor Morrison. This is Special Agent Martinez. FBI Richmond Field Office. Judge Coleman's referral. Everyone went still. Martinez's voice was professional, measured. We've reviewed the materials your investigator forwarded. Based on the pattern across 3 states, the forged documents, and the shell company registration, we're moving forward with a federal investigation into Dominique Laurent. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. He paused. We've obtained a warrant for her arrest. However, timing is critical. If she's alerted prematurely, she'll run. She's done it before. I looked around the table. Abigail's jaw was set. Laura's hands were flat on the table, steady. Nathan was taking notes. Agent Martinez, I said. We're planning a family confrontation with my son for Friday, April 25th. He doesn't know about the FBI involvement. Is there a way to coordinate? A brief silence. Then, if you can guarantee he'll be occupied and unable to contact her at a specific time, we can execute the arrest simultaneously. Split operation. Your confrontation keeps him contained while we move on Laurent. We can guarantee that, I said. 6 o'clock Friday evening. He'll be at my house. No phone. We'll coordinate. I'll be in touch midweek with logistics. And Professor Morrison, thank you for bringing this forward. This woman has left a trail of destroyed families. It ends here. The call ended. The kitchen was silent, except for the coffee maker clicking off. Abigail spoke first. Mom always said Marcus would either build something great or burn something down. She looked at me with Eleanor's eyes. Guess she was right about the burning. Nathan pulled out his legal pad. Let's plan the confrontation. Structure. Timing. Who says what? We need this airtight. For the next hour, we planned. Marcus would be invited to a family dinner. Normal pretense. He'd arrive expecting reconciliation, perhaps, or at least routine. Instead, he'd find Laura waiting. The evidence laid out, and on the laptop screen, a live feed of FBI agents at Dominique's door in Alexandria. Laura would deliver her statement. Calm, factual, devastating. We practiced it together. The first time, her voice wavered. By the 5th repetition, it was steel. You stole 8 years of my life, she said, eyes fixed on the empty chair that would hold Marcus. $95,000 from your children's future. You forged your father's signature, and you did it all for a woman who was using you as a paycheck. Good, Nathan said. Remember, the calmer you are, the more powerful your words become. Don't yell. Don't cry. Let the facts do the damage. Abigail squeezed Laura's shoulder. You've got this. And we'll be right there. As the sun dropped toward the Blue Ridge, Nathan packed his briefcase. We had a plan. Airtight. Coordinated. 1 week away. At the door, I pulled out my phone and typed a text to Marcus. Kept it simple. Light. The bait. Family dinner. Friday the 25th. My house. 6 p.m. Abigail's coming in from Staunton. Would be nice to have everyone together. Don't be late. His reply came within a minute. 3 words and an emoji that made my stomach turn with their casual obliviousness. Sounds great, Dad. I showed the screen to Laura. She read it. Her expression didn't change, but her hand found Abigail's and squeezed. 1 week, Laura said quietly. I can do 1 week. I looked at the 3 of them standing in my doorway. Laura, Abigail, Nathan. An alliance forged from betrayal. A family forming from the wreckage of the one my son had destroyed. Eleanor would have recognized this moment. The moment when you stop grieving what's lost and start building what comes next. 1 week. 7 days to hold the mask in place. 7 days of pretending everything was normal, while the trap drew tight around my son and the woman who'd made him her mark. I'd waited 30 years for verdicts. I could wait 7 more days. The longest 7 days of my life weren't spent in any courtroom. They were spent in my own home, pretending everything was normal while the machinery of consequence assembled itself in silence. Sunday. I drove to Richmond for a brief visit with Sophie and Ethan. Laura had arranged it naturally, casually. Marcus was away. Golf outing with colleagues, she'd said. Which meant Dominique. I took the children to the park, pushed Ethan on the swings. Watched Sophie read on a bench, her legs too short to touch the ground. A novel about a girl detective solving mysteries. Eleanor's granddaughter, through and through. Monday. Nathan filed preliminary motions under seal. The emergency injunction on the property sale held firm. Somewhere in an FBI office in Richmond, agents were building a case file on Dominique Laurent that would follow her for the rest of her life. Tuesday. Marcus called me. Casual. Breezy. Hey, Dad. Just confirming Friday. Should I bring anything? Wine? That cider Laura likes? Bring yourself, I said. That's enough. Great. Looking forward to it. It's been a weird couple of weeks. He laughed. Could use some family time, you know? I closed my eyes and said nothing for a beat too long. He didn't notice. He never noticed. Wednesday afternoon. I picked Sophie up from school. Laura had arranged it, saying she had a teacher conference. The truth was, she needed an afternoon to prepare, to breathe, to practice her words one more time in the mirror. Sophie and I drove to the orchard. The April sun was warm, the apple trees in full bloom, white petals drifting across the gravel drive like snow that couldn't decide whether to fall or fly. We walked between the rows. Sophie's hand in mine. Her school backpack bouncing against her small frame. Grandpa, can I ask you something serious? Of course, sweetheart. She stopped walking. Looked up at me with those brown eyes. Eleanor's eyes. Too much understanding in them, for 8 years old. Are Mommy and Daddy getting divorced? My chest tightened. How did you know that word? We learned about it in school. Lily's parents got divorced last year. And Tommy's mom. She paused. And I hear things. Mommy was on the phone with someone about a lawyer. And Daddy doesn't really live with us anymore. He comes home, but he's not really home. This child. This brilliant, observant, heartbreaking child who'd been assembling the puzzle without anyone handing her the pieces. I knelt to her level. Yes, sweetheart. I think they are. Sophie nodded slowly. Like she'd expected it. Like confirmation was easier than uncertainty. Is it Daddy's fault? I thought carefully. Your daddy made choices that hurt people. Choices that broke trust. And when trust breaks, sometimes relationships can't continue the way they were. Sophie picked a fallen apple blossom from the ground. Studied it. Will you still be my grandpa? The question hit me like a physical blow. This child was afraid of losing me too. Afraid that divorce meant subtraction across the board. Fewer people. Less love. Smaller world. I picked her up. She was getting heavy, but I held her anyway. Sophie, I will always be your grandpa. Always. Forever. Nothing changes that. Nothing your daddy does. Nothing your mommy does. You are stuck with me until the end of time. She hugged my neck. Promise? I promise. We walked the rest of the orchard in comfortable silence. She held my hand and I held hers, and the apple blossoms kept falling around us like confetti at a celebration no one had planned. That night, alone in my study, a memory found me. Marcus at 12 years old, standing in this same orchard on a September afternoon, helping Eleanor harvest Albemarle pippins. She'd handed him a basket, heavy with fruit, and said, "This orchard is a promise, Marcus. A promise we made to this land. You take care of it, and it takes care of you. That's how promises work." Marcus had looked at her with serious eyes. "I'll always take care of it, Mom. I promise." Eleanor had smiled and ruffled his hair. "I'm holding you to that, mister. Where did that boy go? The one who made promises and meant them. The one who looked at his mother with worship and sincerity. How does a 12-year-old who swears to protect something become a 38-year-old who signs it away?" I sat at Eleanor's piano. Hadn't played in 2.5 years. My fingers found the keys by memory. Eleanor's favorite. A Chopin nocturne she'd taught herself in her 40s, then taught me on winter evenings when the orchard was sleeping. I played it through once. Badly. Fingers stiff. Notes uncertain. But the melody was there, underneath the rust. Still alive. If you're still with me at this point, I want to hear from you. Comment below. Would you have made the same choice? Would you destroy your own son to protect everyone else? Or would you have found another way? I genuinely want to know where you stand. One note. While the emotions here are deeply real, some details have been dramatized for storytelling. If this doesn't resonate, feel free to move on. Thursday passed in final preparations. Agent Martinez confirmed logistics. 6 o'clock. Split operation. His team would be in position at Dominique's Alexandria apartment by 5:45. The moment Marcus walked through my door, they'd have a 15-minute window before executing the warrant. Nathan reviewed Laura's statement one final time by phone. Abigail confirmed she'd arrive by 4 on Friday. Frank would be on standby with his laptop, ready to connect the video feed between my dining room and Martinez's team. Friday morning, April 25th. I woke at dawn. Couldn't sleep past 5. Made coffee in the dark kitchen. Stood at the window watching the sun rise over the neighbor's oak tree. The same view I'd watched for 28 years. Eleanor beside me for most of them. I ironed a shirt. Navy blue. Eleanor had always said I looked authoritative in navy. Then I went to the china cabinet and carefully, piece by piece, set Eleanor's formal dinnerware on the table. The blue and white pattern she'd inherited from her grandmother. The set we used for Thanksgivings, anniversaries, the night Marcus graduated law school. Today warranted the china. I placed each piece with precision. Plates aligned. Crystal water glasses. Cloth napkins. Eleanor had monogrammed herself. The table looked beautiful. Formal. Final. Like a stage set for the last act of a play no one in the audience wanted to see end this way. My phone buzzed at 11. Marcus. Looking forward to tonight, Dad. Been too long since we all got together. I stared at those words. The casual warmth. The obliviousness. 12 hours from now, his life would be unrecognizable. I set the phone down and whispered to the empty room. Eleanor, help me do this right. The house was silent, but I felt her there. In the china on the table, in the piano in the corner, in the orchard 40 miles away, blooming without her, but because of her. Tonight, everything would change. And I was ready. Friday, April 25th, 5:45 in the afternoon. The house was ready. Eleanor's china gleamed under the dining room light. Folders arranged at the head of the table. Frank's laptop positioned at the sideboard, connected to a secure video feed, screen dark. Waiting. Laura sat in my study with the door closed. She'd arrived at 4:30, dressed simply. Black blouse. hair pulled back, no jewelry except her wedding ring, which she'd placed deliberately on the study desk when she walked in. A statement to herself before anyone else arrived. Abigail was in the kitchen, pacing. She'd driven in from Staunton at 3, brought nothing except fury and a thermos of coffee she hadn't touched. My phone vibrated at 5:40. Agent Martinez. Team in position at Laurent residence. Alexandria PD, providing backup. We execute at 6:15 on your signal. Confirm when target is contained at your location. I typed back. Confirmed. We'll signal at 6:15. At 5:55, headlights swept across the front window. Marcus's Honda Accord pulled into the driveway. Right on time. Punctuality. One of Eleanor's lessons that had stuck, even as every other one fell away. I watched him step out. He'd brought a bottle. I could see the label from the window. Morrison Orchard Cider. The small batch Eleanor had created. The last vintage produced before her death. He was bringing his mother's creation to the dinner where his life would end. The irony was almost too precise to be real. He walked up the path with that easy stride. That smile. The one he wore like armor against anything that might require genuine feeling. The doorbell rang. I opened it. Hey, Dad. He held up the cider bottle. Found this in our cellar. Thought it'd be nice. A toast to Mom, maybe? I took the bottle. Looked at the label. Eleanor's handwriting on the batch number. Her thumbprint in the wax seal. Literally pressed there 3 years ago, by hands that no longer existed. Come in, I said. He walked into the dining room and stopped. The china registered first. Then the folders. Then the laptop on the sideboard. His smile dissolved in stages. Confusion. Caution. The beginning of recognition. Dad, what's this? He turned to face me. Why the formal setup? Where's Abigail? I set the cider bottle on the sideboard next to the laptop. Moved to the head of the table. Remained standing. Eleanor's cabin, I said. April 10th. 2 in the afternoon. I slid the first photograph across the polished surface. Marcus looked down. The color left his face in a wave, draining from forehead to chin like water pulling back from shore. The cabin. The window. 2 silhouettes. Dad. His voice was barely a whisper. I already told you. I explained. You explained nothing, I said. I slid the second photograph. The kiss. Timestamp. Third photograph. Tesla plates. Fourth. Audi plates. Same woman. Separate vehicle. 10 minutes apart. 16 months, Marcus. Dominique Laurent. $95,000 stolen from your wife. A forged power of attorney. With my name. A contract to sell your mother's orchard for $1.2 million when it's worth $4.5. Marcus's mouth worked soundlessly. His eyes darted between the photographs. Calculating. Assessing. Looking for the angle. The lawyer in him searching for a defense that didn't exist. Dad, listen to me. The business is real. We're building something. I was going to pay everything back. Once the sale generates, there is no business, Marcus. There never was. His hands gripped the edge of the table. You don't understand. She and I, right then. The study door opened. Laura stepped out. She stood in the dining room doorway, backlit by the study lamp. Black blouse. Hair pulled back. No wedding ring. Her face was calm. Terrifyingly calm. The face of a woman who'd spent a week preparing for this exact moment. Marcus's chair crashed backward as he jumped to his feet. His face went through shock, terror, and desperate calculation in the space of 2 seconds. Laura. I can explain. This isn't... Laura raised one hand. Palm out. Fingers steady. The gesture was small but absolute. It stopped him mid-sentence like a wall. Don't, she said. Her voice was quiet, level. Each word placed with surgical precision. Don't lie anymore, Marcus. Your father showed me everything. The photographs, the bank statements, her previous victims, the fake business. I know all of it. Every detail. Marcus looked between us. Trapped animal eyes. Then a pivot. The lawyer grasping for narrative. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The business was real. I was doing this for us. For the family. For our future. For which family? Laura's voice didn't rise. It dropped lower. Which was worse? The family you have? Or the family you planned to have with her after you divorced me and hid the money? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. On the sideboard, the laptop screen flickered to life. Frank had activated the connection remotely. The screen split in two. On the left side, my dining room. The camera positioned above the laptop captured Marcus's devastated face, Laura's steady posture. The evidence spread across Eleanor's china. On the right side, a residential hallway. An apartment door. Alexandria, Virginia. Evening light. Through a window. At the end of the corridor. 3 figures in dark jackets approached the door. FBI in yellow letters across their backs. Marcus stared at the screen. Not understanding yet. Then, one of the agents raised his fist and knocked. FBI. Dominique Laurent. Open the door. Marcus's face went blank. Completely blank. Like a computer crashing. His eyes moved from the screen to me, to Laura, and back to the screen. What is this? He whispered. On screen, the door opened. And there she was. Dominique. Dark hair loose around her shoulders. Silk robe. Wine glass in hand. Her face moved from confusion to recognition to pure animal terror in under 3 seconds. She tried to close the door. An agent's foot blocked it. Marcus watched the woman he'd given everything to being read her rights on a split screen, while his wife and father stood behind him in the room where he'd grown up. And in that moment, I saw it happen. The exact second he understood that everything, every word she'd spoken, every touch, every promise, every plan they'd made together in Eleanor's cabin had been a lie. On screen, Agent Martinez stepped forward. His badge caught the hallway light. Dominique Laurent. You are under arrest. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Dominique's wine glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the hardwood floor, red spreading like a wound. She backed into the apartment. The agents followed. No. This is a mistake. I want my lawyer. I have rights. You can't just... Ma'am, please turn around. Hands behind your back. In my dining room, Marcus stood frozen. His eyes locked on the screen with the horrified fascination of a man watching a car crash he caused. Dominique saw the split-screen connection, saw the camera, saw Marcus watching her, and something in her face changed. The terror shifted into something uglier. Calculation, survival instinct. The mask she'd worn for Marcus stripped away in a single breath, replaced by the real woman underneath. This is his fault. She pointed at the camera. At Marcus. Her voice rose to a scream. It was his idea. He came to me. He wanted to sell that property. He forged the documents. I'm the victim here. He pursued me for months. I tried to say no. Marcus flinched like he'd been struck. She kept going, voice climbing. He's pathetic. Desperate. He begged me to be with him. Begged me to help him get out of his boring little life. Men like him are so easy, so desperate to feel important that they'll believe anything. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Each one landed. Each one took something from him. I watched my son's face collapse in real time. Not just humiliation. Obliteration. The woman he'd loved. The woman he'd stolen for. Lied for. Planned to leave his family for. Was screaming on camera that he was pathetic. Desperate. Easy. Nothing. Agent Martinez put his hand on Dominique's shoulder, turning her firmly. Ma'am, anything you say is being recorded and can be used as evidence. I'd advise you to stop talking. She didn't stop. Even as they cuffed her, she kept screaming through the apartment door. Tell them, Marcus. Tell them it was you. Tell them I'm innocent. You ruined everything. You pathetic. Desperate. The audio cut. Martinez had muted the feed on his end. But the image remained. Dominique being led through her apartment in handcuffs. Silk robe. Bare feet. Mascara running down her face. She looked nothing like the elegant woman from the cabin photographs. Nothing like the confident smile that had seduced 3 men and destroyed 3 families. Marcus sank into his chair. His body folded. Hands gripping the edge of the table like it was the only solid thing left in his world. Laura stepped forward. She moved to stand directly in front of Marcus, close enough that he had to look up at her. She didn't touch him, didn't raise her voice. When she spoke, every word landed with the weight of something rehearsed until it became truth. You stole 8 years of my life, Marcus. He looked up. Eyes red. Wet. Destroyed. You stole $95,000 from your children's future. Sophie's college fund. Ethan's savings account. Every dollar I earned teaching summer school for 3 years. Gone. Spent on hotel suites and designer shopping for a woman who just called you pathetic on federal camera. Marcus opened his mouth. Laura, she continued as if he hadn't spoken. You forged your father's signature. The man who raised you. The man who gave you everything. You forged his name to sell your mother's orchard, the land she spent 35 years building, the land she loved more than anything except her family. And you signed it away for a quarter of its value to impress a woman who was using you as a paycheck. Her voice remained level. Calm. Each sentence a blade. You planned to divorce me. I read your email. You were going to wait until your fake business produced fake revenue. Then file. Structure the settlement, so I'd never know what you'd hidden. Leave me with nothing while you started fresh with her. She paused. The silence was surgical, except there was no business. No revenue. No future with her. Just a con artist who saw you coming from a mile away. Who picked you? Because you were exactly what she needed. Greedy. Insecure. And too arrogant to question why a woman like her wanted a man like you. Marcus's shoulders shook. A sound escaped him. Not words. Something broken. Laura straightened. Pulled her shoulders back. Looked down at the man she'd married 9 years ago. Nathan Webb will contact you Monday about the divorce. You'll hear about custody arrangements through proper legal channels. Don't call me. Don't come to the house. Don't contact Sophie or Ethan until the court establishes a visitation schedule. She held his gaze for one final moment. I hope she was worth it, Marcus. Because you've lost everything. Laura turned and walked to the front door. She didn't rush. Didn't slam. She opened it, stepped through, and pulled it closed behind her. The click of the latch was soft. Gentle. Almost inaudible. Somehow that quiet click was worse than any slamming door could have been. It was the sound of finality without drama. The sound of someone who'd already processed the grief and moved past it. The sound of a door closing not in anger but in completion. Marcus buried his face in his hands. His shoulders heaved. The sobs that came were ugly, wrenching. The kind that shake a man's entire frame. Not the crying of someone seeking sympathy. The crying of someone who has just heard themselves described accurately for the first time and can't bear the portrait. On the laptop, the FBI feed showed agents leading Dominique down the apartment hallway toward the elevator. Handcuffed. Still barefoot, her head turning back toward the camera one last time. Mouth forming words we couldn't hear. I reached over and closed the laptop. The screen went dark. The dining room was silent except for Marcus's breathing and the ticking of Eleanor's clock on the mantel. The same clock that had marked time in this house for 28 years. through dinners and holidays and the slow accumulation of a family's life, now marking the end of one. Marcus looked up at me. His face was ravaged, unrecognizable. "What do I do now?" he whispered. I looked at my son, the boy who'd promised his mother at 12 to care for the orchard, the man who'd just watched his lover call him pathetic on federal video, while his wife calmly dismantled his life with words he couldn't refute. "You face it," I said. "You take responsibility. You try to become a father Sophie and Ethan can respect. Not the father you were. The father you could be." His eyes searched mine for something. Forgiveness, maybe. Comfort. He didn't find it. How? Start by showing up. When the court gives you visitation, use it. Be consistent. Be honest. Stop hiding. I paused, then added the hardest truth. It won't fix what you broke with Laura. That's done. But Sophie still loves you. Ethan still loves you. Don't waste that. Marcus nodded. A small, shattered movement. He stood unsteadily, looked at the cider bottle still sitting on the sideboard. His mother's last vintage. Unopened. Useless now. He walked past me toward the door. At the threshold, he turned. "Dad, I'm sorry. For all of it." "I know you are," I said. "But sorry doesn't undo what's done. It just means you finally understand what you've lost." He nodded once more. Then he was gone. The door closed behind him. Another soft click. I stood alone in Eleanor's dining room. China untouched. Evidence scattered. The clock ticking. I'd orchestrated this. Every piece, every moment. Watched my son's life shatter in real time. And I'd do it again. Because Sophie deserved better. Ethan deserved better. Laura deserved better. And somewhere, Eleanor was watching. And she knew I'd kept my promise. After Marcus's taillights disappeared, Abigail emerged from the kitchen. She'd stayed there the entire time. Heard everything through the wall but honored Laura's right to deliver the words herself. She looked at me. Her face was drawn. Exhausted. The cold fury from a week ago had burned itself into something quieter. Sadder. "It's done," she said. Not a question. "It's done." She walked to the dining table. Looked at Eleanor's china, still untouched. The folders. The cider bottle on the sideboard. Marcus's chair pushed back at an angle. Abandoned. "Mom would have hated this," Abigail said quietly. "But she would have understood why." She hugged me. Hard. The way Eleanor used to after a particularly brutal case. Then she pulled back, wiped her eyes, and picked up her keys. "I need to drive back tonight. Early surgery tomorrow, at the clinic. A horse with colic." "But Dad, call me. Every day this week. I mean it. I will." She paused at the door. "Is Laura okay?" "I don't know yet." Abigail nodded. "Tell her I'm here. Whatever she needs. She's family. She always was. But especially now." After Abigail left, the house fell silent. I cleaned up slowly. Put away the folders. Closed the laptop. Left Eleanor's china on the table because I couldn't face washing it yet. The cider bottle went into the pantry. Behind other bottles. Out of sight. At 9:15, headlights again. Laura's Subaru. But this time, when she stepped out, she wasn't alone. Sophie emerged from the back seat in pajamas. Pink flannel with small horses printed on them. Ethan followed, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. Half asleep. Laura stood on my porch. Children behind her. Overnight bags in both hands. Her eyes were red, but dry. The composure from earlier had fractured somewhere between here and Richmond. "I can't go home yet," she said. "The house feels like his. Everything in it feels like a lie. Can we stay here tonight?" I stepped aside immediately. "Of course. As long as you need." This is your home, too. Sophie looked up at me with sleepy, confused eyes. Grandpa, why aren't we going home? Is this a sleepover? I crouched to her level. Sometimes we need a change of scenery, sweetheart. An adventure. Ethan, barely conscious, reached for me. I picked him up. He was warm and heavy and smelled like toothpaste and the fabric softener Laura used. He tucked his head against my shoulder and was asleep again in seconds. I carried him upstairs while Laura guided Sophie. We set up the guest rooms quickly. Sophie got Eleanor's old sewing room, the small one with the window seat she'd always loved. Laura and Ethan took the main guest room with the queen bed and the view of the backyard oak. Sophie needs a glass of water, Laura said automatically. And Ethan's dinosaur has to be next to his pillow, or he'll wake up at 3 a.m. looking for it. I brought water. Positioned the dinosaur. Kissed Sophie's forehead. She caught my hand as I turned to leave. Grandpa, are we going to be okay? Yes, sweetheart. I promise. She held my hand for another moment, then let go. Closed her eyes. The trust in that small gesture broke something in me and healed it simultaneously. I ordered pizza for anyone who wanted it. Sophie and Ethan were asleep within 20 minutes of arriving, but Laura came downstairs. She tried to eat, managed half a slice before pushing the plate away. I can't taste anything, she said. It's like my body forgot how to do basic things. That's shock, I said. It'll pass. She wandered into the living room, found Eleanor's piano in the dark, sat on the bench without turning on a light. Her fingers touched the keys, but didn't press down. I followed. Sat beside her on the bench. We were quiet for a long time. The house settled around us, creaks and sighs from old wood, familiar sounds that had been my only company for 2.5 years. Eleanor used to play when she was upset, I said gently. Said music was the only language grief understood. Laura's fingers found a key. Pressed it. One note in the darkness. Then another. Not a melody. Just sound. Exploring. Then she stopped. And broke. Not the controlled calm from earlier. Not the rehearsed strength. This was real. Raw. The sobbing that comes when the audience is gone and the performance is over and there's nothing left to hold up. 8 years, she cried. I gave him 8 years. I put my career on hold. I moved to Richmond for his job. I had his children. I cooked his meals. I defended him to everyone who said he was changing, and I still wasn't enough. I was never enough. I put my arm around her. This woman who'd been my daughter-in-law and was now becoming simply my daughter. Listen to me, Laura. You were always enough. Always. He was the one who wasn't. Don't ever confuse his failure with your worth. What he did has nothing to do with who you are and everything to do with who he chose to become. She cried against my shoulder for a long time. Deep, shaking sobs. 2.5 years ago, I'd cried the same way in Eleanor's cabin. Alone. Now I understood that grief shared was grief survived. Eventually her breathing slowed. She sat up. Wiped her face with both hands. Practical. No tissues. Just clearing the way forward. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Be alone. Start over. Tell the kids. Explain why their father isn't coming home. One day at a time. I said. Tomorrow we rest. Monday we meet Nathan. We start the legal process. And we protect Sophie and Ethan as much as humanly possible. She nodded. They're going to ask questions, and we'll answer honestly. Age appropriately, but honestly. Kids are more resilient than we think. From upstairs a sound drifted down. Sophie's voice, soft and clear, singing. The apple harvest song Eleanor had taught her 2 summers ago, during the last autumn before the accident. A simple melody about picking fruit and storing it for winter. About patience and seasons and things that come back if you wait. Sophie was singing it to Ethan. Soothing her little brother. The way she'd learned by watching her mother soothe everyone. Laura heard it. Fresh tears spilled, but she was smiling now. Sad and proud and broken and hopeful, all at once. She taught herself that song from the video I took of Eleanor, Laura said. Watches it every week. Says it helps her remember Grandma. I listened to my granddaughter's voice floating down the stairs. Eleanor's song, passing through generations. Surviving everything. Laura went upstairs. I heard her check both rooms. Heard her whisper goodnight to Sophie. Heard the guest room door close. I sat at Eleanor's piano alone. Found the keys by memory. Played the Harvest song through once. Softly. For Eleanor. For the family sleeping upstairs. For whatever came next. When I finished, I whispered to the dark room. They're safe, Eleanor. They're here. And they're going to be okay. The house settled into silence. Upstairs, 3 people I loved slept under my roof. Refugees from my son's destruction. But safe. Protected. And tomorrow, we'd begin building whatever came next. Together. Monday morning. April 28th. Nathan filed the divorce petition in Richmond Circuit Court at 9:12. Fault-based. Grounds. Adultery and willful dissipation of marital assets. Attached exhibits included photographs, bank statements documenting $95,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, the forged power of attorney, and the fraudulent property sale contract. A simultaneous motion voided the sale agreement for the orchard pending investigation. By noon, a process server walked into Hargrove, Price & Associates, Marcus's corporate law firm in downtown Richmond. Found him at his desk. Handed him the papers in front of 3 colleagues, whose offices shared the glass-walled corridor. I wasn't there. But I imagined it. The receptionist watching. The paralegal, pausing mid-stride. Marcus's face as he read the words, "Petitioner seeks dissolution on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct." The walk of shame back to his office. The door closing. The whispers beginning. By 3 o'clock, the senior partners called him in. I heard this secondhand through Nathan, who heard it from a contact at the firm. They didn't fire him outright. They suggested administrative leave. Indefinite. The firm's reputation couldn't sustain association with a pending fraud investigation. Marcus agreed without argument. Walked out with a banker's box of personal items at 4:15. That same Monday, the federal grand jury in Richmond returned an indictment against Dominique Laurent. 3 counts of wire fraud. 2 counts of identity theft. 1 count of conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. The indictment referenced 3 victims across 2 states. Marcus wasn't named as a co-conspirator. He was named as a victim. A distinction that probably saved him from prison but wouldn't save him from anything else. Dominique was denied bail. Flight risk. She'd already demonstrated a pattern of disappearing between states. The judge ordered her held at the Alexandria Detention Center pending trial. The $95,000 in disputed funds was frozen by court order. Tuesday evening, I received a voicemail from Marcus. His voice was hollowed out, unrecognizable. "Dad, please call me back. I need to talk to you. I don't know what to do. Laura won't answer. The firm let me go. I can't see my kids." He paused. "I've lost everything. You're all I have left. Please." I sat holding the phone for a long time. Then I deleted the voicemail. Guilt hit immediately. Sharp and physical. Then anger at myself for feeling guilty. He'd earned this, every piece of it. And my job wasn't to cushion his fall. It was to let gravity teach him what I couldn't. 3 weeks passed. Laura settled into a rhythm at my house. She enrolled Sophie and Ethan at a Charlottesville elementary school temporarily. Found a substitute teaching position at a local middle school. She was functional. Organized. Moving forward with the mechanical determination of someone who'd decided that stopping meant drowning. Sophie asked about Marcus daily. "When can I see Daddy? Is he okay? Does he miss us?" Laura handled each question with grace I admired. "Daddy loves you very much. He's going through a hard time right now. You'll see him soon. But soon kept stretching longer. Mid-May. A Thursday afternoon. I drove to Richmond. Found Marcus's new address. A small apartment complex off Broad Street. Not a nice area. 3rd floor. No elevator. The hallway smelled like cooking grease and carpet cleaner. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Heard movement inside. Slow. Heavy. The door opened. Marcus looked destroyed. 3 weeks of beard, patchy and unkempt. Sweatpants stained at the knee. A t-shirt that might have been white once. The apartment behind him was dark. Curtains drawn. A mattress on the floor. Moving boxes still taped shut. Empty delivery containers stacked on the kitchen counter. Dad. Surprise and something else. Hope. Desperate. Fragile hope. Can I come in? He stepped aside. I entered without comment on the state of the place. Judgment wouldn't help here. I sat on the single chair. Marcus sat on the mattress edge. We faced each other across 6 feet of stained carpet. Your former colleagues called me, I said. Said you stopped going in 3 weeks ago. Marcus stared at the carpet. I didn't stop. They let me go. Before the confrontation. The partners called me in and said my situation created liability. He laughed, bitterly. I'm a corporate lawyer who got conned by a fake business. That's not exactly a resume builder. Silence. I can't see my kids. He continued, voice flat. Nathan sent temporary custody terms. Supervised visitation only. I keep meaning to schedule the first session, but every time I pick up the phone, I don't know what to say to them. Sophie's old enough to know I did something terrible. How do I look her in the eye? You look her in the eye because she's your daughter. And because not looking is worse. More silence. The money's gone, Dad. All of it. $95,000. I know it's frozen for the criminal case. But even if it comes back, it goes to Laura. He rubbed his face. How did I let this happen? I'm a lawyer. I read contracts for a living. I should have seen it. You saw what you wanted to see. I said. She showed you a version of yourself that felt bigger than who you actually were. And you chose that fantasy over everything real. Marcus looked at me. Eyes red-rimmed but dry. Past crying, maybe. Or just empty. Everyone knows, he whispered. Friends, colleagues. Our neighbors in Richmond. Laura's family. Everyone knows what I did, and what was done to me. I'm either the cheater or the fool. Sometimes both in the same conversation. I looked at my son. The man who'd had a family, a career, a legacy, and had traded all of it for a woman who'd called him pathetic on camera. You want sympathy, I said. You won't get it from me. He flinched but didn't argue. But if you want to survive this, you will. You have to choose it. You can sit in this apartment in the dark and drown, or you can stand up and try to become a man your children can respect. I leaned forward. Not for Laura. She's done with you. Not for me. For Sophie. For Ethan. They still need a father. Maybe not the father you were. The father you could become. Marcus's voice cracked. Does Laura ever ask about me? The truth? No. She doesn't. His face crumbled. But Sophie does. Every single day. She asks if you're okay. If you're sad. If you'll be happy again. That little girl loves you, Marcus. Despite everything. Don't waste that. Schedule the visitation. Show up. Be consistent. Let her see you're trying. I stood. Walked to the door. Turned back one more time. Step 1, Marcus. Pick up the phone. Call the supervision coordinator. Schedule your first visit. That's all. Just step 1. He nodded. A small movement. But his eyes had shifted. Something in them that hadn't been there when I arrived. Not hope exactly. Not yet. But the absence of surrender. Which was something. I drove home on Interstate 64 with complicated feelings I couldn't name. Not forgiveness, not anger. Something in between that didn't have a word. The sense that my son might survive this. Might, slowly and painfully, choose to become someone worth knowing again. Sophie's voice in my memory. Is Daddy okay? Does he miss us? Yes, sweetheart. He misses you. And maybe, just maybe, that missing would be enough to make him move. October. 6 months since I found my son in Eleanor's cabin. The leaves outside the Richmond family court building had turned gold and rust, crunching underfoot as I walked from the parking lot at 9:30 on a Tuesday morning. 6 months. 180 days of legal filings, therapy appointments, supervised visits, and the slow, grinding machinery of divorce. Time enough for wounds to stop bleeding, even if they hadn't healed. Time enough for people to change, or at least to begin. I sat on the bench outside courtroom 3 and waited. The hallway smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Other families moved past, each carrying their own fractures into rooms where judges would try to make broken things functional. Laura arrived at 9:45. I almost didn't recognize her. She'd cut her hair. Short now, just below her jaw. It made her look older, sharper, more herself, maybe, than she'd been in years. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse. Simple earrings. No wedding ring. Hadn't worn one since April. Nathan Webb walked beside her, briefcase in hand, reviewing notes on a legal pad. He nodded at me professionally. Laura saw me and smiled. A real smile. Not the practiced one from April. This one reached her eyes. Dad Hank. You came. The name still caught me off guard every time. She'd started using it in June. Dad Hank. Not father-in-law, not Hank. Something in between that acknowledged what we'd become to each other. Of course I came. We walked into the courtroom together. I took a seat in the gallery behind Laura's table. Nathan arranged files with the precision of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. At 9:55, Marcus arrived. I hadn't seen him since the apartment visit in May. 4 months. He looked different. Older than 6 months should have made a man. Gray at his temples that hadn't been there in April. Deeper lines around his eyes. Thinner, but also clean-shaven. Pressed suit. Tie knotted properly. On time. He'd hired a young attorney, a woman in her early 30s who looked competent and organized. They sat across the aisle. Marcus's back was straight. His hands were still. Our eyes met across the courtroom. He nodded once. Small. Tentative. I nodded back. Not forgiveness. Not warmth. Acknowledgement that we were both still here, still alive, still trying, in our different ways, to navigate what he'd broken. All rise. Judge Catherine Alvarez entered. Late 50s. Experienced family court judge with a reputation for fairness and zero tolerance for dishonesty. Please be seated. We're here for Morrison versus Morrison. Custody determination and final asset division. Counsel. Are we ready to proceed? Both attorneys confirmed. Nathan presented Laura's case first. Methodical. Devastating. The evidence was overwhelming, and Marcus's attorney didn't challenge the facts, only the interpretation of what they meant for his fitness as a parent. Photographs entered as Exhibit A. Bank statements documenting $95,000 in dissipated assets as Exhibit B. The forged power of attorney as Exhibit C. Timeline of deception as Exhibit D. Supervised visitation compliance records as Exhibit E. Your Honor, Nathan concluded, Mrs. Morrison seeks primary custody to provide stability for her children while their father rebuilds the trust he systematically destroyed over 16 months. She does not seek to eliminate his relationship with Sophie and Ethan. She seeks to protect them while that relationship is reconstructed on honest ground. Laura took the stand. Calm. Factual. Describing the discovery, the betrayal, the financial losses. When asked what she wanted, her answer was simple. I want my children to feel safe. I want them to know that actions have consequences. And I want Marcus to have the chance to be their father again when he's earned it. Marcus's attorney called him to the stand. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked forward with the careful posture of a man carrying something heavy. He took the oath. And then, to his credit, he told the truth. I made catastrophic choices, Your Honor. I betrayed my wife. I stole from our family. I forged my father's signature. I endangered my children's future for a woman who was exploiting me. There is no excuse for any of it. He paused. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the witness stand rail. I've been in weekly therapy since May. I have a new position at a smaller firm. I've attended every supervised visitation session without exception for 4 months. I'm not the man I was 6 months ago. I don't want to be that man ever again. His voice cracked slightly. I love my children. Sophie and Ethan are everything I have left that matters. I understand why Laura doesn't trust me. I'm asking for the chance to earn back my children's respect. Not today. Over time. Consistently. Judge Alvarez reviewed documents in silence. The courtroom waited. Laura's hand rested flat on the table, still. Nathan's pen was motionless. Finally, the judge looked up. Mr. Morrison, you possessed every advantage. Education, family support, financial stability, professional training that should have made you immune to exactly the kind of manipulation you fell victim to. Instead, you chose, repeatedly and deliberately, to prioritize your desires over your family's welfare. The court finds this profoundly troubling. She paused. However, this court also recognizes that people can change. Your therapy compliance is documented. Your visitation record is perfect. Your therapist report indicates genuine progress. Judge Alvarez removed her glasses. Therefore, primary physical custody is awarded to Mrs. Laura Morrison. The children will reside with their mother. Mr. Morrison is granted unsupervised parenting time every other weekend. Friday evening through Sunday evening. Holiday schedule divided per standard guidelines. Child support is set at $2,800 per month. She looked at Marcus directly. Use this time wisely, Mr. Morrison. Rebuild the trust you destroyed. Be consistent. Your children deserve a father who shows up. Every time, without fail. Marcus nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The gavel struck. Court. Adjourned. That afternoon, Nathan called with the Dominique update. Federal trial had concluded 2 weeks prior. She'd been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Restitution ordered. $95,000 to the Morrison family, $85,000 to Tyler Barrett, $52,000 to Derek Whitfield's estate. Total. $232,000 she'd likely never fully repay. But the conviction was on record. Permanent. If she tried again after release, there'd be a trail. Outside the courthouse, October air crisp against my face. Laura took my arm as we walked to the parking lot. The leaves crunched. The sun was low and golden. Thank you, Dad Hank, she said. For everything. For telling me. For helping me. For Nathan. For choosing what was right, when you could have chosen what was easy. I stopped walking. Looked at her. This woman who'd entered my life as a quiet daughter-in-law and become something closer to a daughter. I didn't choose you over Marcus, I said. I chose what was right. Sometimes those happen to be the same thing. She squeezed my arm. Across the parking lot, Marcus was getting into his car. Alone. He looked up one final time. Our eyes met over 50 feet of asphalt and 6 months of wreckage. He nodded once. I nodded back. Not forgiveness. Maybe not ever, but acknowledgement. He was trying, showing up, choosing, day by day, to be better. And that was something. Laura and I walked to my car together. The afternoon light was golden, slanting through the courthouse oaks, turning everything warm. Eleanor would be proud, I said quietly. Not of how we got here, of how we handled it. Truth with compassion. Justice without cruelty. Laura was quiet for a moment. Then, I think she'd be proud of you most of all. We drove home. Toward Charlottesville. Toward Sophie and Ethan, waiting with Laura's mother. Toward the life we were building from pieces of the one that shattered. Toward whatever came next. Spring returned to the Shenandoah Valley. 2 years since I found my son in Eleanor's cabin. 2 years since a phone call set everything in motion. 2 years of legal battles, therapy sessions, custody exchanges, and the slow, patient work of rebuilding what was broken. The orchard was alive, not just surviving, thriving. Apple blossoms covered the hillside like fresh snow, white and pink, against the Blue Ridge backdrop. The trees Eleanor had planted 35 years ago stood tall and thick-trunked, producing more fruit each season than the last. As if they knew they were being cared for again, as if they'd been waiting. I pulled into the gravel drive on a Saturday afternoon in late April and saw the sign first. Hand-painted, elegant, mounted on reclaimed barnwood at the entrance to the tasting room. Eleanor's Legacy Cider, Est, 1989. Revived with love, Laura's idea. She'd proposed it last autumn, sitting on the cabin porch after the children were asleep. What if we brought it back? Not the way it was. The way it could be. She'd quit teaching in January, poured herself into the cider operation full-time, studied Eleanor's journals, learned the recipes, hired 2 part-time staff from the local community. The tasting room had reopened in March to weekend visitors, and by April, they were selling out of the small batch reserve every Saturday. I parked and stepped out into warm air, thick with blossom scent. From the tasting room, I could hear Laura's voice explaining fermentation to a couple of tourists. The same cadence Eleanor had used. Patient, passionate, making people feel like they were being trusted with a secret. Sophie appeared from behind the cider house, wearing a canvas apron 3 sizes too big. Her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. 10 years old now. Taller. Eleanor's cheekbones emerging from baby roundness. "Grandpa!" She ran over, apron flapping. "I'm helping bottle today. Laura let me operate the capper. I only broke one. Only one is excellent," I said, hugging her. "You're a natural," she grinned. "Grandma Eleanor would be proud, right?" "Very proud, sweetheart." Ethan appeared next, rounding the corner of the barn at full speed. 7 years old and built for motion. He wore miniature gardening gloves and had dirt smeared across his forehead like war paint. "Grandpa." He skidded to a stop in front of me. Come look at the new trees." He grabbed my hand and pulled me through the orchard to the south field, where we'd planted 6 new saplings last spring. Young Albemarle pippins. Eleanor's favorite variety. The trees were small still, barely taller than Ethan, but budding green. "Grandpa, when do these ones make apples?" I crouched beside him. 3 years, maybe 4. You have to be patient. Water them, protect them from frost, give them good soil and sunlight, and in 3 years, they'll give you fruit. "That's so long," Ethan said, frowning at the saplings like he could will them to produce faster. Sophie had followed us. She stood beside her brother, one hand resting on the nearest sapling's thin trunk. "Like people," she said quietly. I looked at her. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "You have to take care of people and wait for them to grow too. You can't rush it. You just have to keep showing up and being patient." I knelt beside both of them. "Exactly like people, Sophie. Exactly," she smiled. That knowing smile that reminded me so much of Eleanor it physically hurt. Then she took Ethan's hand and pulled him toward the cider house. "Come on." Laura said we could taste the new batch if Grandpa says it's okay. I watched them run through the rows of apple trees. Two children who'd weathered a storm no child should face. And here they were, running, laughing, whole. From the tasting room, Laura emerged, wiping her hands on a towel. She'd grown into this place the way Eleanor had. Not replacing her. Continuing her. The confidence she carried now wasn't the fragile armor of 2 years ago. It was structural, built from the inside out by 18 months of proving to herself that she could do hard things alone. She wasn't alone, of course. Abigail had opened a small veterinary clinic in the converted equipment barn last September. Large animals. Farm calls. She drove her pickup between the clinic and local farms 6 days a week. But Saturday afternoons were always here. Always family time. Abigail appeared now from the barn, stethoscope still around her neck, coffee in hand. She raised the mug in my direction. "Hey, Dad. Goat with an abscess this morning. Glamorous work." I laughed. The kind of laugh that comes easily. That hadn't come easily for a long time. At 3:30, a silver Hyundai turned onto the gravel drive. Modest. Practical. Not the Honda Accord from before. Marcus had sold that months ago, along with most of the Richmond life. Sophie saw the car first. Her body language shifted. Straightened. Brightened. "Dad!" She ran across the yard. Full sprint. Arms open. Marcus stepped out and caught her, lifted her off the ground the way he used to when she was small. His face broke into something unguarded. Joy. Pure. And uncomplicated. The face of a man who understood exactly what he was holding, and how close he'd come to losing it forever. He looked healthier than October. Steadier. He'd found work at a small firm in Harrisonburg. Estate planning. Quiet work. Honest work. He drove 40 minutes each way, and never complained. Therapy continued weekly. He'd moved to a small rental house in Staunton, 20 minutes from the orchard. Close enough for Wednesday dinners that had become routine over winter. Ethan ran over next. Less urgency than Sophie. More casual. The ease of a 7-year-old who'd adjusted to the new normal. "Hey, buddy." Marcus ruffled his hair. "Ready for our weekend? Can we go fishing?" "Absolutely." Marcus looked toward Laura, who stood on the tasting room porch watching the exchange. Their eyes met briefly. No warmth. No hostility. The neutral efficiency of two people who'd found a way to share children without sharing anything else. "How was their week?" Marcus asked. "Good." Sophie got an A on her history presentation. Ethan learned to ride his bike without training wheels yesterday. Laura's voice was matter-of-fact. Informational. The careful communication of cooperative co-parenting. Marcus turned to me. We stood facing each other across the gravel. 2 years of distance. 2 years of rebuilding. Slow. Imperfect. Ongoing. "Thanks, Dad. For having them here. For everything you do." I studied him. My son. Not the man he was. Not the man I wished he'd been. But maybe the man he was becoming. "We're family," I said. His eyes filled briefly. He blinked it back. Nodded. Then loaded the children into his car. Sophie waved from the back window. Ethan was already talking about fishing bait. Marcus looked at the cabin once before pulling away. Our eyes met through the windshield. Too much history in that gaze. Pain, shame, loss. But also something else. Gratitude, maybe. Or the beginning of it. He nodded. I nodded back. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Completely. But acknowledgement. Progress. The slow work of 3 years. Growing into something. After they left, Laura came to sit beside me on the cabin porch. 2 rocking chairs. The ones Eleanor and I had used for 30 years of sunsets. Laura had added a third, for Abigail, last summer. The Blue Ridge spread before us. Purple in the late afternoon light. Apple blossoms drifted on the breeze. "Can I ask you something?" Laura said. "Of course." Do you think Mom Eleanor would be okay with all this? She gestured at the orchard. The cider house. The sign. Me being here. Everything being so different from what she planned. I thought carefully. The way I always did when Eleanor's name came up. Treating her memory with the precision it deserved. I think Eleanor believed in second chances, I said. Not for people who broke trust without consequence, but for the broken pieces left behind. She'd see you here, Laura. Strong. Thriving. Running her orchard better than it's been run in years. She'd see Sophie and Ethan laughing in her apple trees. She'd see a family that survived something terrible and chose to keep going. I looked at her. She wouldn't just be okay with it. She'd be proud. Deeply proud. Laura's eyes glistened. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you, Dad Hank. For everything. For 2 years of everything. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun moved toward the mountains. Abigail joined us after closing the clinic, dropping into her chair with a contented sigh. 3 people on a porch, watching a sunset. Ordinary. Extraordinary. Sophie's voice carried from inside the cabin where she'd returned to practice her cider notes, singing to herself. Eleanor's harvest song, the melody drifting through the open window like a thread connecting past to present to future. Sophie appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. Paint on her fingers from the art corner Laura had set up where Eleanor's easel used to stand. Grandpa, are we still a family? The question she'd asked 2 years ago in this same orchard. Different now. Not afraid. Curious. Wanting confirmation of something she already felt. I opened my arms. She climbed into my lap. Getting big for it. But not too big yet. Yes, sweetheart. We are absolutely still a family. Even though everything changed? Even though everything changed. Sometimes family is the people you're born to. And sometimes, family is the people you choose. The people who show up, who stay, who keep choosing each other every single day. Both kinds are real, Sophie. Both kinds are family. She leaned her head against my chest. I like our family, Grandpa. Abigail raised her coffee mug. I'll drink to that, Laura laughed. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and true. I held Sophie and looked out at Eleanor's orchard blooming in the spring sun, the mountains beyond, the family around me. Not the family I'd planned, not the family I'd expected at 68 years old, but the family I'd been given by circumstance, by crisis, by the daily choice to show up and stay. And it was enough. More than enough. After they left, after Laura's car disappeared down the gravel road, and Abigail's truck rumbled toward Staunton, I walked to Eleanor's cabin alone. The door opened easily now. No longer the monument to grief I'd sealed shut for 2.5 years. Laura had painted the walls pale blue last summer. Eleanor's favorite color. New curtains hung in the windows, letting afternoon light pool across the wide plank floor. But Eleanor's paintings remained on the walls. Her writing desk sat in its same position by the fireplace. Her journals lined the shelf above it, spines worn from decades of use. I sat in her chair. The wicker one by the large window. The one that faced the Blue Ridge Mountains. The same chair where I'd broken down crying 2 years ago when I first entered this room after my son's betrayal. The same chair where Eleanor had spent 1,000 afternoons watching the seasons change. The view hadn't changed. Mountains. Sky. Apple trees. The eternal patience of landscape that outlasts every human drama played upon it. I reached for the shelf and pulled down Eleanor's last journal. The leather cover was soft from years of handling. Her handwriting filled most of its pages. Observations about the orchard. Notes on cider recipes, reflections on family, letters to grandchildren she'd hoped to watch grow up. The last entry was dated 3 days before her accident. A Tuesday afternoon. She'd written about the autumn light and how the Albemarle pippins were producing their best harvest in years. I turned to the first blank page. picked up the pen she'd kept in the desk drawer. A fountain pen. Blue ink. The kind she'd preferred, because she said ballpoints had no soul. And I wrote, Eleanor, 2 years ago, I discovered our son had lost his way. Lost himself inside ambition and insecurity, and the attention of a woman who saw him as currency, not as a person. I had a choice. Protect him from consequences the way fathers are tempted to do, or show him that principles matter more than comfort, more than blood, more than the desperate wish to pretend everything is fine. I chose truth. It cost me my son. Not entirely, not permanently, but the relationship we had is gone. What's growing in its place is different, smaller, more careful, built on honesty instead of assumption. I don't know if it will ever be what it was. I've accepted that it might not. And I've accepted that this is okay. But Eleanor, what I gained. I gained a daughter. Laura became family, not through marriage, but through crisis and choice, and the daily decision to show up for each other. I gained time with Sophie and Ethan that I might never have had. I gained this orchard back. Alive again, producing again, filled with laughter again. Your cider recipe being made by hands that love it as much as yours did. The family is still here, Eleanor. Not the family I thought I'd have. The family I needed. The family that chose me back. I hope I made you proud. Forever yours, Hank. I closed the journal. Returned it to the shelf. Stood and looked around the cabin one more time. Blue walls. Eleanor's paintings. The desk where contracts had once been spread that should never have been there. Now, holding a vase of fresh wildflowers Sophie had picked that morning. I stepped outside and locked the door. Not to seal away the past. To preserve it until the next time this family gathered here. Next Saturday. And the Saturday after. And all the Saturdays stretching forward into whatever time God granted us. I walked through the orchard toward my truck. Slowly. No hurry. The late afternoon sun angled through the apple trees, casting long shadows across the grass. Eleanor's trees, 35 years old, heavy with the promise of autumn fruit, and beside them, the new saplings. Small, fragile, but rooted, growing. 3 years from producing their first harvest. Orchards and people aren't so different. Both need good soil, consistent care, protection from the harshest weather, and time. Above all, time. You can't rush a tree into bearing fruit. You can't rush a family into healing. You can only show up each day, do the work, and trust that God's timing is better than yours. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, pulled slowly down the gravel drive. In the rearview mirror, the orchard grew smaller. The cabin, the cider house, the sign Laura had painted, Eleanor's legacy. Still standing, still producing, still alive. I thought about what I'd learned these 2 years. Not the legal strategy or the investigation or the courtroom victories. Those were mechanics. What I'd learned was simpler and harder. Family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who stays when everything falls apart. Who shows up at your door in pajamas, with 2 children and overnight bags. Who calls you Dad Hank without being asked. Who sings your wife's harvest song to her little brother at bedtime. Family is the people who choose you. And the people you choose back. Every single day. I used to think love was a feeling. Something that arrived and stayed or arrived and left. And there was nothing you could do about it. Eleanor taught me differently. Love is a decision. A daily one. You wake up and choose it again. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You choose to stay. Choose to show up. Choose to tell the truth when lying would be easier. Choose to protect the vulnerable. Even when the cost is your own heart. God doesn't waste our pain. I believe that now more than I ever did sitting in a church pew. He takes the worst thing that ever happened to your family and makes something new from the wreckage. Not the same. Not what you planned. but real and whole and enough. The sun was setting behind me as I drove east toward Charlottesville, orange and gold flooding the rearview mirror. The Blue Ridge silhouetted against a sky that looked like it was on fire. Beautiful, relentless, continuing without permission or apology. I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not the absence of pain, not the forgetting of what happened, but the quiet, bone-deep knowledge that we'd survived, that we'd rebuilt, that the family sitting on that porch this afternoon, laughing and planting and choosing each other, was real, was enough, was everything. Eleanor had always said that orchards teach patience, that the best things in life take years to grow, that you plant not for yourself but for the people who come after you. She'd planted those trees 35 years ago. She'd never imagined who'd be harvesting them now. I think she'd look at Laura's hands on the cider press and Sophie's paintings on the cabin wall and Ethan's muddy gloves in the garden shed, and she'd smile that smile of hers. The one that said, "This is exactly right, and if you're still with me after this journey, I want to thank you for walking alongside this family through its darkest valley and out the other side." I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my position? Would you have made that phone call? Would you have chosen truth over comfort, justice over blood? There are no wrong answers, only honest ones. If this story touched something in you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear that family isn't defined by the mistakes of one person. That chosen family is real family, that God redeems what we think is irredeemable, if we let Him. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. There are more stories to tell, more questions worth asking, more valleys worth walking through together. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know.